Okay.
All right, good morning, everyone. This is Ted Davis. I'm the SWAN board president. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 10:01 a.m. I'd like to welcome you to the December quarterly. I know we're all in various states of opening and closing and wishing we were open and wishing we were closed. So I appreciate you taking the time and coming out today for our quarterly. We've got a pretty full agenda, so let's jump right in. We'll start with any public comment. Please raise your hand if you have any public comment at this time. Nope. Okay, let's move on to the introductions. We've got several groups of people to introduce today. We have some of our friends from Rails who are joining us, as well as our new SWAN 100 directors, as well as other first-time visitors. So let's start with our friends from Rails. I think we have Ann Slaughter and Grant Halter, and I'm pretty sure I saw Dee Brennan on the list. You guys should be unmuted. If you could just introduce yourselves and let us know who you are.
Oh yeah, we can unmute you, Dee.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
I just
Thank
saw
you.
the message.
All right, just start with Dee. Say hello.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Dee Brennan, Deirdre Brennan, Executive Director of Rails. I can only see you, Aaron. Is there a way of seeing more people? Or not that I don't love seeing you, but
No, I'm the only camera that will be on
okay,
off
okay.
and on.
I'm just making sure that I'm doing everything right. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ann?
I'm Ann Slaughter. I'm the Director of Technology Services at Rails.
And Grant.
I'm Grant Halter, Data Analysis Manager at Rails.
Thanks to all three of you for joining us on our call today. We'll try to keep it interesting for you. Next, we have some esteemed new guests. The SWAN 100 directors are joining us today, I believe, for the first time. I'll let them introduce themselves. We're giving you a digital round of applause right now in advance. So from Glenn's side, we've got Tom. Tom, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm Tom Bartenfelder, Director at the Glenside Library in Glendale Heights. We're excited. This is a long-term goal. Maybe about 3 years ago, we thought about this, and I'm really excited that next week we're going to go live. And I just want to give a real quick thanks to Aaron and everyone at SWAN. They made it as easy or easier than I thought it could be. So thank you and welcome.
Welcome to you. That's really great to hear. We're very, very glad to have you join us. Sam is here from Roselle. Sam?
I think Sam was having technical problems, so dropped out, and I expect her to come back in.
Okay, when she does, we'll give her a minute to talk. Is Sandy here from Warrenville?
Sandy is now joined, yes.
I'm here.
Hi.
Hi. I was having technical difficulties too, so you can hear us. I will just echo what Tom said. We're really excited to be going live 1 week from today. We're counting down. And again, the SWAN team has really, I just have to compliment all of you for the shift that you've had to make to doing all the training online. And the communications have really been great, and all the documentation and training has been just top notch. So thank you all for the work that you're doing to make this easy for us.
Thank you, Sandy.
Great to hear. You're very welcome.
I will add all that benefits the entire membership, because then this all is able to translate documentation and techniques over to all member libraries. So thank you. We'll get into that later in the presentation.
Super. Do we have any other new directors or first-time visitors representing their library that'd like to introduce themselves? Just raise your hand and we can unmute you if so. I can't see raised hands, so you have to tell me if there's anybody.
Not seeing anyone.
All right. Well, if you're just too shy, you're welcome all the same. Moving on, we have an action item for the approval of the September 3rd, 2020 quarterly meeting minutes. Can I have one of the unmuted board members make a motion, please?
It's Julie. I'll move.
And a second? Okay. Anybody raise your hand for a second, please? Did we get one?
Not yet.
Jane.
Jane.
Thank you, Jane. All right. If there are no questions or modifications, then can you please see the poll on your screen, yay, nay, or abstain? It's interactive, just click the right one and press submit.
We're at 70% voted. And since we do have multiple people from same library, I believe we can go ahead and post this since there's only one voting per library.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Dawn. We'll go ahead and move on. I'm gonna go dark and hand it over to Aaron if you're ready to go.
Thank you, everybody. I'll remain on camera for a little bit and then just to thank everyone for joining us today. We do have an agenda and a packet that was posted. Hopefully you all saw that when I sent that out to you all. So you can refer to the packet online. The agenda also is listed here in terms of the topics we have today. So we will be going over library service models and trends during the pandemic. We wanted to show you a few of the things that we've worked on per some of the discussion we had at our last board meeting. We do continue to host those fireside meetings. So those fireside meetings are really more focused on SWAN library pandemic response, but we thought there would be some good trends to sort of highlight and maybe have some directors comment on. We also want to talk about our Aspen Discovery platform, where our investigation is going with that. And then, of course, an overview of the SWAN 100 project. We also want to get into the fact that we're going to be looking at within the budget planning that's begun for next year's budget. We'll have Robin Hofstadter do an update on the EBSCO group purchase, which is coordinated with Rails. And ending on that, I want to have our Rails folks talk about the LSAP funding grant, which is the grant that we get through Rails and one of 6 consortia in Rails that receives the grant. And this will be an overview of the grant and also how this formula has changed. And this is just sort of one of the key components of our budget planning. So I did have a first draft for our board, and we'll be asking our Rails friends to talk about the grant. So Dawn, if you can move to the next slide here, and I'll ask Dawn also to jump in with me in talking about some of these service models and trends that we've seen. So I'm going to turn off my camera. So one of the things that I will say that we've been really looking at is our library services status is something that we've been continually trying to keep up with, encourage our libraries to update us on where you're at within the sort of ongoing changes with this pandemic. So this library service status page on our support site has undergone a few changes. We're trying to make it much easier for you to sort quickly to understand libraries that are open or closed, or their book drops are open or closed. We'll be able to show you from Dawn's screen also some of the other features here, but the map is a recent thing that we introduced that can be linked to from the library services status. So this came from some discussion at the board, and the ability to just display all the libraries and where they're at and do those with icons. Dawn, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about this. This builds on some of the Google Maps that we've made prior.
Right. I think we were getting feedback knowing that libraries need to know what their neighbors are doing at any point in time, because it impacts, you know, how you're assisting your patrons, how you're packaging material to return to libraries, et cetera. So while we had our ongoing list that had that all in text form, and we continue to update that as we get those service requests that come in, we also wanted to provide just a kind of a visual that we're maintaining. So you can, you know, pull up this map. Basically, if you're open for patrons to go into the library, you're going to see that green library symbol. If you're offering curbside only, no public entry in the building, then the curbside icon. For those libraries that are totally closed, they're going to be shown in red. Totally closed means there no book drops, no resource sharing, anything. And then if your physical facility is closed, but the book drop is open, those are shown as well. So we continue to update this. Stephen and his team make sure that as those requests come in for the status updates, that they're making these updates to the map on a daily basis.
So within SWAN, I think this is a really good example of, like, the situation on the ground is sort of changing with some frequency, as we were discussing before the meeting. Ted Bo Davis's library, Thomas Ford, has had to close. So we want to just be able to sort of have a way for you all to quickly understand what libraries are potentially closed, maybe not receiving delivery. So this is what we're referring to. We also would encourage you to submit status changes over on the Rails side. They also have a survey going for any service changes focused on virtual services that are provided and such. So do consider notifying SWAN and also notifying the Rails folks as well. All right, so some of the things that we are hearing about are a few of our libraries are also looking at acquiring lockers. They may be in the process of having those either ordered or installed. There are some tie-ins maybe to what would be the ILS system, such as Symphony, that we would want to just touch on. We know that some libraries early on were also providing home delivery. I know Evergreen Park was one that really jumped in early with doing home delivery, and I know a couple others were doing home delivery, such as Eisenhower. And of course, with all this, the virtual services, increased use of e-resources is just vital within the pandemic. So Dawn, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to this. I think we do know that it was some of the libraries that we're looking at with lockers was Oak Park, I believe Downers. Were there others that we had heard from?
Stephen, you want to jump in with others you know of?
Yeah, so right now we're working with Oak Park and Downers Grove. And then previously in the year, Villa Park actually rolled out some lockers. And so some of the vendors that we've seen, and this is not the definitive list, but some of the ones that we've been interacting with are Smiota, Luxor One, and D-Tech.
Tiffany, I know you put your hand up. I didn't know whether or not you wanted us to unmute you for a comment. I think your hand up has been up for a bit.
Approve the minutes.
Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. Let's move on to some of the other parts of the presentation here, Dawn.
All right, so we've tried to kind of just keep a look at how circulation has been impacted by the pandemic. Obviously, we had that huge surge, and then the floor dropped out for a while. We've pretty much held steady through the summer, getting up to about 65, 67% of total circs we were actually seeing in the late summer, early fall. We have seen a bit of a drop down, but really that's due to the holiday, probably not so much due to the additional closures, because we have seen on the days that we have been open that there are still some good, strong, about 60%, 50 to 60% of the circulation. But what's telling is this Monday after Thanksgiving, compared to 2019, we were at 47% of circulation traffic the Monday after the Thanksgiving holiday. So I think that's indicative of what we may be seeing over this next month. We also wanted to just kind of look at overall month to month, how circulation trends compared on a monthly with last year. And again, we saw that slight decrease in November, but basically inching up towards about 67%. And here you do see like the curve line. We'll have to keep an eye on that through the winter months, how that's impacting all of us. The hold situation is one that I personally find fascinating because we really are in a holding pattern. And if we compare back to pre-pandemic, we're not far off from how holds behaved prior to the pandemic. So you see that if we're looking at the number of holds placed, it's really pretty steady, as well as holds picked up. And what's fascinating is the number of users placing holds is very consistent with the number of users pre-pandemic placing holds. So we actually know that, here's that line number 1, where we see the users that are impacted or actually placing holds probably are the same people that were placing holds pre-pandemic, and we're at that steady pace. We're seeing that more holds are being placed than previously, and that's because that is the way people are getting access to resources now. But we do see that we've got really kind of a steady number of holds. The whole processing that you've all put into place for handling of curbside and pickup and in-lobby picking up of holds seems to be very steady, and you're churning a lot of people through that process. So we're not seeing a lot of fluctuation at this point. Erin, you got any other things statistical?
No, just there were a couple questions that came in and listing some of the someone wanting to know some of the vendors as far as the lockers go. So we've answered that. I would also suggest we did put in the SWAN community forums a starter sort of discussion on lockers. So by all means, go over there. You can see what has been discussed, which lockers are maybe sort of in play, or if you are a library that's looking at purchasing a locker, feel free to share there what you're looking at, why you liked the choice. I know some of them are, quite gorgeous. I think those D-Tech ones are really nice, but then some of the other ones, like I think it's called Smiota. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, Stephen. So, they vary in terms of their tech and their integration and what they can do as far as, texting patrons and such.
Yeah, in fact, through the research that we've been doing, Smiota and Luxor One, they're currently investigating ILS integrations, but they don't actually have a current integration with Symphony. So the way that they're being set up is almost kind of like curbside. So materials can be prepped ahead of time and checked out to the patron, and then they're put into the locker, assuming that the patron has already opted into that locker service. And then some of them have, notifications that can actually come from the locker if the patron has opted in, and a few other things. So it doesn't necessarily need to integrate with the ILS. You can still operate those lockers as a separate entity. In fact, I believe there's one library that even moved to just using gym lockers in their vestibule. So that's kind of an interesting way of doing it. So instead of doing curbside pickup they run out and they put something in the locker and they tell the patron which locker to use. So you know, there are a lot of different implementations of this, but certainly the ILS integration makes it especially slick. And again, DTech is one of them that specifically has that integration, but others are kind of looking at it. So you always want to ask to see where they are in that process.
So since we have had some recent activity and questions regarding this, and we do have the forum discussion, it seems like maybe it would be helpful if we just had a roundtable discussion planned. You know, we're a little busy now bringing 3 new libraries in, but it seems like this is something we could all share and learn from each other. So we'll look at doing that, you know, after our go live.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm gonna make note. Julie Milovic, you also noted some of the ones as far as the lockers, which can be used outdoors, indoors. So I think, Julie, you're definitely volunteered yourself for the panel.
That's not a problem. I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, so we'll have Tara Wood give an update on what's going on with Aspen. We did at the September meeting introduce probably most of you to the Aspen project, which is a new catalog that SWAN is investigating, and we're pretty far along in terms of now having a catalog that is actually working with our data and is live. So let's have Tara go over Aspen.
Sure. So we are rapidly approaching the kickoff for our pilot project. That first meeting will be December 14th. And we just this past, I think Monday, announced the 7 pilot libraries that will be participating. We had 14 libraries apply, so we weren't actually able to include everyone, unfortunately. So we wanted to keep the group just kind of small and flexible enough that we can still meet and rapidly move through our research and setup. So those 7 libraries are Chicago Ridge, Downers Grove, Oak Brook, Oak Park, St. Charles, Tinley Park, and Villa Park. And based on what we find out in the process of this pilot that will run, I'll go over the timeline in the next slide, but it will run from now until April. It will determine, you know, what our recommendation is to the membership and the SWAN board if we should move forward with Aspen. And really the decision would be to set up all of our libraries on Aspen for a year and decide if that is the route we want to go in the long term. We would have Enterprise available at the same time. So this kickoff begins the 14th. We'll be going through training with our pilot leads, something that's really different from Aspen than Enterprise, which you're currently used to, is there are a lot of options for staff to configure the catalog and customize it. And so that is great, and that gives you a lot of flexibility, but it is going to require more library staff time potentially. There will be some, you know, ability for you to customize or not customize it as much as you are able to, and SWAN will certainly help with that. But that is a really big change. The beta catalog configuration will run from December through January. So during that time, we'll be setting up the catalogs with the pilot libraries. They'll be working on their own configuration settings, getting their hands dirty in there. And then when it is ready to make available to patrons, we'll have a beta launch that will be in February. And during that time, we'll be doing additional configurations, some research activities. Research will look very different than we probably initially conceived of it when we started talking about this maybe a year or so ago. We will be doing online usability tests, which we've done several of now already with both patrons and staff, and those have gone really well. We'll have a couple surveys and other online only tasks. So we sort of wanted to proceed with the assumption that our libraries may not be open, but as long as patrons are still using the catalog, which clearly they are, to place holds and that can access our e-resources, there's still a lot we can learn in an online environment. And so as I said, the beta launch would be in February. At that time, the pilot libraries would make this available as kind of a secondary catalog to Enterprise through a link on their website and other promotion possibly. And then at the April board meeting, we hope to have a final report and make a recommendation. So in the next slide, we have kind of what it would look like if we go live. So we anticipate that it might be easier for both you and your libraries and for us if we would go live in sort of what we're calling cohorts. So the pilot libraries could potentially go live in May as they would be set up and have gone through training. And then we would set up 4 additional go live cohorts to kind of go live in each quarter. And we would at that time work closely with the libraries to help with training and getting their catalogs set up and ready for them to make available to their patrons. And then the kind of final piece in this whole process and the final decision would be if we would want to retire Enterprise, that would be in 2022. So if you want, you can start taking a look at Aspen. We do have, as of yesterday, we just had set up the pilot library catalogs. So Stephen just got those URLs set up, and we've got the catalogs. They are up and running, though not completely set up yet. That will be something we're working with the libraries on. But you can view Oak Park and St. Charles were kind of our initial part of our initial testing. So they do have e-resources available. If you kind of want to see a more fully fleshed out catalog, you can visit any of those links. And there are a few other libraries that are live on Aspen that you could check out as well, including the Arlington Public Library in Virginia, not Texas. They're often confused. Aspen Cat in Colorado, and then Anne Arundel is in Maryland, and they are also a Circe Dynex library. And we do encourage you to take a look, use Aspen as a patron. You can log in with your library card, you can place holds, you can manage your account. SWAN staff has been doing that already. It definitely helps us with our testing and getting to know how to use the catalog. Feel free to compare searches between Aspen and Enterprise. We do have some documentation posted that our pilot libraries will be using. That is all available to anyone to look at. We do just ask for now that you don't submit any tickets about Aspen until you're kind of, unless you're the pilot libraries will have a process for that. We just don't want to get inundated with tickets for known issues that we know we're working on, since this is a beta. So when we get closer to being live, then we will definitely encourage more tickets and that kind of thing. And you can visit the support site. We've got all of the research that we've done so far posted, and as well as those milestones.
And Tara, just one question or clarification. While this is a pilot project, is it connected to our production system? So if I place a hold, can I expect it to be filled?
It is absolutely connected to our. So if you are using, when we say using Aspen as a patron, it will be, you will be live. Those will be your actual holds. So do you know, if you're just testing things out, that those tests are real life?
I will add, we did a much a thorough overview at the last quarterly meeting. That meeting's recorded, and on this Aspen page, Tara, you do have video overview of Aspen, correct?
Yes, it's an overview that Bywater Solutions that we're working with to implement Aspen, our Aspen test. They put that together, and it outlines not just the patron functions, but several of the staff facing features as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So Aspen's something that we'll be talking about within our budgeting process. Just as a heads up on that, we will be moving our process along with the December board meeting, and then we'll be having an announcement of what will be the February committee of the whole meeting, which is a reminder, we'll have a membership meeting to review the budget presentation of fees, and then we'll go to the March meeting as well. So I just want to touch on that. Let's move on. SWAN 100 project. So Dawn, you're back on deck, and I will mute myself.
All right. Well, we've been spending a lot of time with Glenside, Roselle, and Warrenville, and I'm thrilled to finally have them be. Their data is already appearing in the system. So if you've been looking at enterprise or workflows, you may be seeing some of the bib and item records coming in. Just to reiterate kind of the detailed instructions that have been provided through the news post of how this migration is going to work. Their data is coming in now, it's being reviewed, and what's going to happen on Saturday and Sunday is we are re-indexing the entire bibliographic database. As we did with Green Hills, Scott has developed a routine that we call a pre-dedupe so that all of these items don't land as duplicates in our catalog. We go through this processing beforehand. He does this analysis which matches the incoming bibliographic records with our SWAN catalog keys. And that just reduces tremendously the amount of duplicates we get on the back end of migration. But we also, to make that efficient, and since we are bringing in kind of clean records at that point, we want to make sure that we are re-indexing the entire database. So that's going to happen Saturday and Sunday. Stephen will kick that off early Saturday morning, and it potentially could run for 36 hours. We really don't know. So stay abreast of SwanComms. We will update you with progress, but you will need to work offline during that Saturday, Sunday time period. We know we have very little activity on Sundays, so we thought that was the best time to do that rebuild. On Monday morning, December 7th, 6th, I've got the date wrong here, December 7th, and 8th, our existing SWAN libraries will be up normal. Look for the SwanCom for the all clear, but we expect circulation to be as normal. Our new libraries coming in that Monday and Tuesday will actually have their patron, transaction data, circulation, holds, bills, all that fun stuff loaded on Monday and Tuesday. And then they'll be ready to go live on Wednesday, December 9th. We will have staff on site at those libraries to help out getting started. We'll also have online rooms to provide virtual support throughout the first few days, if not the first full week. And when the new libraries come on board, they will not be doing full resource sharing. And that's just to enable them to get used to the system, for their local holds to be filled locally, and their full resource sharing switch will turn on in January. So then all of our libraries will start to see materials flow from Glenside, Roselle, and Warrenville, as well as them receiving libraries. So that's kind of the timeline. And what's happening right now is, just to recap, you will be seeing those bibliographic records. Some nightly processing will be delayed. That's actually what happened Monday when we had some delays. It was because, or Tuesday morning, is because we had a lot of items that came in and were caught in the indexing. We have the offline set. We have recordings available for if you need a reminder on offline. The basic reminders are you're going to do checkouts only, no check-ins, no new patron registrations during offline. And then post-migration, something that we're learning with the new libraries, Sam has worked closely with the new libraries in getting them up on Blue Cloud acquisitions. So our internal expertise on Blue Cloud acquisitions has gone way up because we've been using it now for our Baker and Taylor rental collection. And we're going to have these 3 libraries up on Blue Cloud Acquisitions, which will provide us the next step of where we're headed in acquisitions. And we've also done some of the other projects that have been implemented over the past year, such as item type consolidation and a simplification of some of the loan rules. That has all been implemented as part of the profiling of the new libraries. So they're kind of coming in as a model of simplicity, which we hope will make everyone's lives easier as we implement this throughout the consortium. Scott, Sam, Stephen, you guys are on the core project team. Anything you want to add?
Not for me. I think you covered that really, really well.
Yeah, I think that covers it for me. Just everyone remember, Saturday and Sunday will be offline for the existing 97 libraries. Monday and Tuesday will be the new 3 will be offline.
Okay, and welcome libraries.
All right, so thank you, Dawn. And we now have Robin Hofstetter is going to talk about the EBSCO group purchase of databases, and then some of the next steps that we're looking at, because we are coming up within this, as I already noted, SWAN budget planning, that we'd be looking at an EBSCO renewal. So Robin, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, take it away.
Thanks. All right, so our group purchase through Rails will remain the same for 2021 and 2022 with the package B option. So the package B with Rails will not change. It will be the exact same databases. Our estimated price right now is $450,000, $450,584. But that's for 95 libraries. Last year, our price was $420. That was for the 92 libraries. So we are seeing an increase by adding the 3 new libraries, and then also 3% from EBSCO. So this is still a huge deal. If each of us went on our own through Rails, we'd expect to pay twice as much. So if we each went on our own, it would probably be close to $900,000. This price, it could be lower or higher, but it's not going to be far off from this estimated amount of $450,000. We'll know more by January when we finish the negotiation with EBSCO and through Rails. So Rails has really helped us out a lot with the EBSCO negotiation. And then some stats. You can find the SWAN-wide EBSCO stats on the support site here using this link. Around the 10th of the month, we update those for the prior month. So the EBSCO stats are not available until sometime around the 8th or 9th. So we update those on the 10th. The overall stats just for this first quarter show system-wide that Novelist Plus and Novelist Plus K through 8 are by far seeing the highest use. I also want to mention that if you'd like to set up a time to go over stats for your library or compare those with the overall SWAN stats, I'd be happy to do that one-on-one with you. We can do it online, and I can show you how you can pull your own and calculate cost per use. Just send in the help ticket to help@swanlibraries.net, and I'd be happy to help you out. And then I want to mention that because the package is heavily loaded with reference databases, that students in school with public library cards can use all of these databases either remotely or even at the school. So if the students at the school have library cards, if your outreach program or something is working with the schools, you can promote these for use there. These are really great resources for students. So that's all I have about that. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those now, or you can send in a help ticket.
Okay, Robin, thank you. Any hands raised? We'll lower those. Not seeing anything. Okay, so let's move on. Thank you. And wanted to touch on the FY22 budget. So let's move on to the next slide here. So within the packet, I did do an overview of some budget planning. So exhibit page 7 in the packet, if you have not seen that, starting to talk about some of the areas of the budget, touching on Aspen Discovery, what that would cost. Thank you, Dawn, for showing that. And then talking about the revenue benefit from the libraries coming in, and talking about that, just overall as a benefit to SWAN, and what we've completed in terms of the accounting service change, and then completing our financial audit. I have an overview here, so feel free to look that over if you haven't. If you have questions, you can certainly ask me. But what I would like to get into next on the next section is the budget presentation in terms of how that works as we get to part 6 here, which is the LSAP grant award. So this is an award that is given to the consortia, the resource sharing consortia that are in Rails, and Rails has a grant program to fund the consortia. So just as part of the change from FY21 to FY22 with a formula change, that grant that we use in SWAN is applied to the public libraries in SWAN as a discount off your membership fees. So as Robin already touched on, we already are going to be looking at that we will go from 92 to 95 public libraries, which is great. I've already noted that there's revenue benefit to SWAN in terms of 3 libraries joining SWAN. The membership fees of those libraries more than offset any added expense. But we are looking at it as far as the Rails grant, with that decrease, that there is the direct impact would be, the difference would be that award would go down. So with that, I thought it would be good. This was and I suggested by the board to have Rails come in, talk about the grant, talk about the changes. So I will turn to now Ann Slaughter and Grant Halter, and of course Dee Brennan, if you would like to jump in at any point as well. But let's do a little technical change here. I think we'll want to get Grant's screen ready. And just note, everyone that is in attendance, if you have questions, you can raise your hand, or you can send in a question via the Q&A.
Okay, Grant, I made you presenter.
Okay, it sounds like you are ready for us then. I'm going to start, this is Ann, and talk about the annual LSAP support grant, how it works, and introduce the formula. And then Grant, our data analysis manager, is going to talk about the metrics and the functioning of the formula. So to begin, we have an annual LSAP support grant program that is really the key way or a key way that Rails supports resource sharing across our service area. We are currently and have been flat funding this for a few years now, budgeting $2.25 million annually. And as Aaron said, there are 6 LSAPs in the Rails service area, and all of them are invited to apply for this grant each year. And in total, these LSAPs represent 380 library agencies across the Rails service area. So for this grant program, the primary eligibility criterion is meeting the LSAP definition, which is rooted in the state administrative code, but it is a Rails specific definition that's approved by the Rails board. So in addition to being a kind of the basics of being an ILS consortium, a group of libraries sharing an ILS, the definition specifies that these groups maintain policies that broaden resource sharing, make membership affordable, and that they work together to ensure the ability of all LSAPs to meet member needs kind of under the Rails services umbrella, increasing the use of shared catalogs and developing services that will further resource sharing throughout Rails. The support through this grant is, of course, contingent on the availability of Rails funding from the state, and we distribute it as a mix of financial and in-kind services, and this varies by group. And kind of as an outgrowth of being an LSAP, the groups are also able to have new members apply for the catalog membership grant. And through that program, we've been happy to support the SWAN 100 libraries. It's nice to see Sam, Sandy, and Tom here getting ready to go live, very exciting. And of course, the new 19 before that, in addition to other SWAN library projects over the years. We don't place any restrictions in how the grant funding is used through the LSAP support grant. We just ask that the LSAP can demonstrate the benefit of however they use that funding to the consortium or its member libraries. So every group approaches that a little differently. So we have a formula that we use to allocate that support, that 2.25 million total in support to LSAPs. And we use a formula to equitably allocate that support. The consortial landscape is constantly shifting. So having kind of a static way of distributing that support doesn't reflect the changing nature of each individual group and the overall landscape over the years. Our formula is designed to reflect the key values that underpin the LSAP support grant. And those are supporting resource sharing activities, and then, as I said, equitably distributing that support, with the goals of increasing resource sharing, ensuring affordability of LSAP membership, and increasing LSAP membership. The formula that we use has evolved over the years, looking for general overall stability while allowing for some fluctuations as the landscape shifts. The current version of our formula includes safeguards for disproportionate fluctuations, including using 3-year averages where it's practical and quartiles, which Grant will explain. And we have also set a goal of mitigating disproportionate fluctuations from year to year for any given LSAP. So if an LSAP has a 10% or greater decrease from the previous year when we run the formula, we will take steps to mitigate that decrease. So the fiscal 22 formula, as Erin mentioned, is new. That's new with an asterisk. It's really an evolution of previous versions, beginning with the formula, the first formula that we introduced in fiscal 16. The metrics have shifted a bit over the years as we've learned from the process, and of course brought in Grant's data expertise. And we've built in equity factors that are designed to ensure that our support helps to maintain services to libraries with a lower ability to pay. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Grant so he can go into more detail as to how the metrics were determined and how the formula functions.
Okay, hang on. I got some weird things happening with Grant, so let me figure out what's going on here.
Dawn, if I need to do something, let me know here.
Okay, Grant, I think you're presenter now. So you should be able to share your screen.
Hello? Hello.
Yeah.
There you are. All right. So I assume Anne left off at the point where I will be explaining the metrics.
I did, Grant.
Okay. So let's try a screen share. Is everyone seeing this Excel document?
Yes.
All right, so the quartiles are a new thing that we implemented to this evolution of the formula, and it was really in an attempt to redistribute the flat per agency component across our equity measures, which are collection expenditures per capita based on service population, and annual fee as a percentage of operating budget. Both of those use this quartile kind of method that I'm about to show you, but they're slightly tweaked in terms of the amount of money that is allocated to each component, but otherwise they operate the same. Oh, and actually, collection expenditures includes all libraries, but annual fee as a percentage of operating budget only includes public libraries. But other than that, they're both the same. So as you can see here, I just have a sample list of 20 libraries here, and I assigned them all to a different LSAP at random. This next column here is a sample collection budget per capita, so they're just all assigned at random again. And what we did to create the quartiles was we sorted these collection budgets per capita from lowest to highest, and then assigned them a quartile from the bottom 25% to the first quartile, then the next 25%, and so on to get over. Because the numbers run out easy with 20 libraries here, each quartile has 5 libraries total. See them here, there's a break, and that provides stability in the formula, so that as we add more libraries to LSAPs, they can fit in nicely within a new quartile, and there won't be too much jumping of libraries from year to year. So from that, we then count how many libraries are in each LSAP and in each quartile. So you can see in this example, LSAP A has 7 total libraries over here, and they have 1 in the first quartile, 1 in the second quartile, 2 in the third quartile, and 3 in the third quartile. That distributes differently by the other LSAPs, and LSAP C, you see, has only 3 libraries, but they're distributed in the same way, depending on how they fit. We then calculate the percentage of libraries each LSAP has in that quartile. So you can see down here, LSAP A has 1 out of the 5 libraries in quartile 1, so they get 20% of the allocation assigned to quartile 1, which I'll get to in a second. And same for LSAP B, has 3 out of 5, 60%. LSAP C gets 0% because they don't have any libraries that land in that first quartile. So from there, we take those percentages and multiply them across the allocations that we decided. In this example, I assigned $100 to this component as a whole, and then we distributed in the formula, the first quartile gets 40% of the total allocation, the second quartile gets 30%, 20%, 10%, and so on as the equity measure. So effectively, the libraries in quartile 1, which are at the lower end of the collection budget per capita, will share a larger portion of the total dollars. So then if you apply that across, LSAP A, who had 1 library in the first quartile, would get 20% of the money assigned to quartile 1. So they would get 20% of that $40 in this example. And that's applied across all the others. See, LSAP C doesn't get any in quartile 1 because they didn't have libraries there, and LSAP B gets 24. You'll notice that as you go higher in the quartiles to this quartile 4, which are the libraries that have the highest collection budget per capita, they get less dollars per library for every library you have. And then we total up from all 4 quartiles for all the LSAPs how much they get. And you can see just because you have more libraries or fewer libraries doesn't necessarily mean you get more money. We kind of stripped out the one-for-one correlation here. So even though LSAP B has fewer libraries than LSAP A, they ended up with having a total higher dollar amount because they have more libraries in the bottom, the lower two quartiles, which effectively share a larger percentage of the total allocation. And now that works the same way for annual fee. We did that as a annual fee per, just their percentage. Sorted those lowest to highest, assigned their quartiles, went from there with the same application. The ILL RB transactions component actually is unchanged in the way it works. It's just the total transactions, percentage of total transactions compared to the whole LSAPs. The biggest difference is we changed the total allocation of that metric from $150,000 in the previous formula to $400,000 in this version of the formula. So that was a pretty significant change. And then we added a new component, multi-type, which counts all of the non-public libraries in all LSAPs and distributes the money evenly across all of those, depending on how many LSAPs you have or how many non-public libraries you have in your LSAP. So regardless if it's special, academic, or school, they're all the same, but you just get a straight up proportion of that, and that will change as those non-publics join or leave LSAPs. Does anyone have any questions on all that? I know that was a lot of math and following the progression.
Grant, was there anything more you wanted to share on your screen?
No.
All right. Let's go back to the Dawn's you sharing and just pull up the packet, and then we'll open up for some questions. So just for everyone's just a reminder, I did put this in the chat. In the packet, I do an overview of the formula here, which is on the screen. Dawn, do you mind going up to the prior page? Here we go. So the grant award and its changes, and this is the basic overview. So Ann, I don't know if there's anything more you wanted to add. We can certainly start having folks raise their hands if they want to ask questions.
I don't have anything to add. Happy to answer questions.
Okay.
Aaron, this is Ted. Maybe I can kick us off. Several people emailed questions to me that I thought that I would just ask on their behalf. Is that okay?
That's fine. Yep.
Okay. The first one is, what was the impetus for changing the formula now, and does it reflect a change in Rails priorities?
This is Ann. I will take this one. The impetus for changing the formula, I think I sort of at least touched on this when I was speaking earlier, that we first introduced a formula for allocating support in fiscal 16. Prior to that, the LSAPs had received support from Rails, and before that, their predecessor systems, kind of based on a lot of different factors. And after Rails formed, that support to LSAPs was based on the support that they had received from their predecessor systems. So we needed to develop a way of rational and explainable way of allocating that support. So that's the impetus for having a formula itself. And so, of course, over the years, the consortial landscape has changed a great deal. When I joined Rails almost 7 years ago, there were 11 consortia in our service area. Now there are 6. And we have gone from having 4 LSAPs to 6 LSAPs. So that has given rise to a need to evolve the way we distribute our support as the the landscape has shifted, the makeup of the consortia themselves has shifted. And when Grant came on board, we now had data specific expertise in-house. So he and I collaborated on evaluating our formula and developing the new version of this formula. The key change in which was to introduce the concept of the quartiles, which Grant just explained. So the second part of that question, does this reflect a shift in Rails priorities? It does not. As I said earlier, our goals remain the same: to support resource sharing, to support the operation of LSAPs, and we continue to budget $2.25 million towards that goal.
Great, thanks. I have a couple more. The second one, the person asked, the significant decrease in funding will result in an unexpectedly large increase to SWAN member fees. Was any consideration given to spreading this out or moving more slowly?
You know, that's not actually something, I can't really speak to the way that the SWAN budget is structured. As I said, we don't place any restrictions on how the LSAPs decide to apply their funding to their own operations. And we did establish that the mitigation strategy, where if an organization was to have a 10% or greater decrease in their support, that we would mitigate that. So that didn't come into play at this point.
Okay, I think I'm good for now. Aaron, I'll let you take the questions with the raised hands if there are any.
Let me see. Julie Milovac, why don't you go ahead and ask?
Hi, as the one of the SWAN representatives to the consortia committee, when this was discussed at the Rails consortia committee, the presentation was made about the formula change, and we kind of went over it, and there was kind of a the tweaking to level out any decreases. The 10% threshold was actually never discussed. It was simply stated that a tweak, that the formula would be tweaked to smooth any decreases. And so I was very surprised to see a 7% decrease for SWAN that, you know, received no mitigation when at the, and I know both for the consortia committee and at the board level, I couldn't find anything that actually said that the threshold for tweaking the formula for a percentage decrease was going to be 10%. So I just want to know what the rationale was for that. You know, as an organization, a 7% decrease in one of our funding sources is huge. So I'm really just interested to hear the rationale.
Well, thanks for the feedback, Julie. You know, we talked about that, the several conversations that we had over several consortia committee meetings, and you know, did recall talking about the 10%, which I know wasn't, you know, the detail of the minutes didn't capture that. So, you know, we do expect that the formula, that the allocations will fluctuate from year to year, and that's because of factors like I mentioned. You know, this funding is being distributed to 6 very different organizations, and the numbers within each metric then shifts. So if you look at the chart on your screen, the organizations that received the largest percentage increases were organizations that added members over the previous fiscal year. So that impacted their support amount. And with this, the fact that we have to flat fund it, Rails funding itself is flat, hopefully not decreased in the near future, that there is kind of back and forth within that pool.
The other hand raised is Dawn Bussey. Dawn, I don't know whether or not you have the ability to unmute your mic. I'll unmute you if you want to ask your
I
question.
think I was just unmuted. So,
There you go.
Anne, you mentioned earlier in your presentation that the Rails funding allocated for LSAPs has remained flat for several years. We can all understand that, but I would ask, is there any opportunity that Rails would consider allocating more funding to the LSAP budget line?
I will answer that if that's okay, since
Sure.
this is Deirdre Brennan. The answer is really that we would love to increase that amount. This is certainly not the year to do it because we are waiting every day to hear whether our budget for this year will be cut. Next year doesn't look great. In fact, it could be worse. I mean, they're talking about a potential 5% cut this year, and that would be a 5% cut in 6 months of our budget. So, I'm right with you there. I wish we could give lots and lots more money to support resource sharing in this way and in other ways, but this is not the year to do that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? You can raise your hand or send it in to the Q&A. Otherwise, I'm not seeing any just yet. Ted, I'll turn to you if you have any other questions.
I don't, but I will say thank you very much for coming to speak to our group. I think you can understand, our friends from Rails can understand that our members were surprised and disappointed to see this decrease in funding, particularly vis-a-vis what other consortia were getting. It's difficult to understand, and I'm sure that you can understand our distress when we see that, knowing that it's going to raise our fees. And I realize that's an internal matter, but nevertheless, surely you can understand our distress at a loss of funding. So I appreciate you coming in today and helping us to explain it to our membership.
Could I say one more thing, Ted?
Sure, please.
Just to kind of, put a from the larger perspective, perhaps that the board and I have to look at. And of course, this, I mean, we're happy to come and explain this to SWAN. This is, you're a major resource sharing engine. But, we do have a big service area, a big and diverse service area. And we have to try to respond to the needs of a very diverse group of libraries. It's been eye-opening for me as I have driven around, well, not anymore, libraries in Rails that, have one part-time staff member and a budget of $30,000. And, they're trying to do the same things for their communities as you guys are. So I just say this because that's where we're coming from, and we don't like to disappoint anybody, obviously, but it's just the reality out there. It was stark to begin with, and it's starker now. So thanks for letting us come and explain it. Obviously, if you have any further questions, we're always happy to answer them.
Thank you, Dee.
My pleasure.
Are there any other questions, Aaron? I can't see the hands. I think we're good.
I think we're good. Julie Milovic, I don't know if you had your hand up. Maybe I forgot to lower it.
No, I just wanted to add that I would ask SWAN or ask Rails to reconsider that 10% threshold for tweaking the formula, because getting a 7% decrease to a funding source is huge. And I don't know if you would consider lowering it to like 5%, but I just gonna throw that out there, that I think that would be that it may be easier for the consortia to budget in the future if the threshold for decreases is a little lower.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, are we ready to move on, Aaron?
Yes, we've got the slides back up. So thank you all, and Grant and Dee, for jumping in and joining us today. And let's move on. I think we're near the end here. I do see one question here that I need to still answer. It's about the EBSCO group purchase. So Dawn, I don't know if you have the next slide ready to go. I can probably advance it as well. There we go. So I don't know if there's additional questions from the group. We can certainly answer them. This question is from Laura at Northlake, and this is about the EBSCO group purchase. I would say that what Laura's looking at is opting out of the group purchase for EBSCO and looking at paying for that, and the usage of that is not justifying the cost. So Laura, I'm also happy to unmute you if you want to share anything with the membership and SWAN board.
I'm unmuted. All right.
There you are.
Yes,
there you go.
I just wanted to bring this up. I brought it up when it was initially proposed, and it passed. We were in very different financial times then than we are now. And we were kind of like, we had already cut a lot of our databases because of a trend with less and less and less usage. Certainly all of our academic databases have gone by the wayside. Our patrons are looking for Netflix and Hulu, and Ancestry does okay, hit or miss, but more kind of, that's not our community. And then, now we've had these databases and the usage is pretty terrible. And we're paying $5,000 for them. We're a medium-sized library, and that's a huge chunk of our adult services budget. And then now here we are looking at some pretty serious economic fallout from COVID. We are still trying to get creative with the minimum wage increases. And now that there will be SWAN membership increases, I think this is the time that we need to start talking about opting out of this group purchase. I'm a new director, so I don't know if there's been any other kind of, I hate to use the word forced, but mandatory group purchases. I remember when we started Media on Demand, that was opt-in, and that opt-in price was much lower. That was only $3,000, and that was even still, opt-in, because we knew there was libraries that could not afford the $3,000 for ebooks, which have fantastic usage. So I guess I just want to know, am I the only library feeling this way and looking at this cost like, oh my gosh, we can't, it was such a blow to hear we're moving ahead with another year and there's an increase.
Thanks, Laura, for sharing. I'll just say, as executive director at SWAN, I do know that there were some questions when we were going through this process a year ago about opting out. We were looking at this next round renewal of retaining the full participation of public libraries within this. So that said, we haven't we did not explicitly state that in today's meeting. So I would just say our presumption was that we would. Certainly I can discuss this at the December board meeting with the board. I've not heard from any other directors yet about this. I want to say I'm not certain Robin Hofstetter has, since the implementation of the group purchase, I would say satisfaction has been pretty good as far as what Robin has been hearing, that the people like this purchase. But that said, I'm not trying to say anything about what you're raising today, other than we probably need to talk about it.
Sounds good. That's all we can ask for. Again, we can't possibly be the only library in this boat, and it does take away some of our flexibility, you know, moving into maybe a very difficult budget of what to cut and what to move around. You know, we just need the flexibility to make the decision for our own community on what goes and stays and where best to spend our tax dollars. So thank you.
Okay.
Erin, it's Robin. I just wanted to thank you, Laura, for bringing that up. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the budget questions and things. So I know when initially we first looked into this as a group, there were 18 libraries that didn't have any EBSCO current subscriptions. But so everybody else did. So that's 83 libraries that did have current subscriptions. And the reason that we have to go all in, all or nothing together, unfortunately, is if we want to save this kind of money as a group, which is, you know, half the amount that it would cost each individual library on their own. Unfortunately, to make it, in order to save that amount, it has to benefit EBSCO in some way as well. And the way that it benefits them is that they don't have to sell any of these products to the individual libraries. So the individual libraries are not licensing them. So it benefits us greatly in reduced costs, and it benefits all the other Rails libraries. And so unfortunately, there's no way to do it like Overdrive has done successfully. And if there were, I would certainly, you know, Layla from Rails and I work closely with this, with EBSCO, and, you know, we're working on behalf of all the patrons in the consortium and the libraries, and I totally, absolutely, 100% understand what you're saying. It's just that at this point, it's just an all or nothing deal. And so even though you're not seeing high use, I think that maybe the other 84 libraries do see the use. So I'd be happy to work with you however I can.
Okay, well, I see in the chat that I'm not alone, and thanks for sharing that there's 18 other libraries. Because I guess the feeling I'm getting is the cost savings to the consortium is very much at the expense of these 18 libraries who did not have an EBSCO contract before, probably due to budgetary or usage or some very good reasons.
And just as a reminder, the way we approached it is that we were aware that there may be libraries that would be maybe feeling more pressure in this group purchase. So the approach that was taken and presented was that libraries that, you know, maybe could have gotten a much larger discount if they had gone on their own, were willing to give up some of that savings for the benefit of all the group libraries, knowing that they would have to, these libraries would have to participate as all public libraries in the consortium. So we did come up with some pretty deeper discounts for those libraries that met within that. So I want to just note that if the percentage discount you know, was not something you're thinking about, that was something that we put into place to help with that. So, but certainly there are some libraries talking about the, you know, in our chat as far as, you know, the pressures they're feeling. We understand that. And we are coming up into this EBSCO renewal. The initial meeting with EBSCO was looking at a percentage increase. So that still remains in negotiation. So just want to note that, but I don't know if any of our Rails friends are listening in, and not to put you on the spot, Dee, Ann, or anyone that's left, as far as any statewide effort in a group purchase was something also that has been talked about. I didn't think it was coming up this next year, but certainly it was something that was looking at coming.
Sure, I can answer that, Aaron. As you know, we put forward a proposal last year for a statewide database purchase, and it had tremendous support from the library community. It did not make it into the Secretary of State's budget last year. They decided to put the priority on the per capita grant increase, which did get approved by the legislature, and fingers crossed that that won't go anywhere. I would be very happy to put that forward again. In fact, we've been talking about that a little bit. ILA has made it pretty clear that they're not going to support proposals like that. That they're going to be much more focused on the sort of keeping the funding whole as opposed to increasing funding. So I guess it's kind of a long answer, but again, this year is probably not the year, but if you think, I mean, we're going to have a consortia committee meeting soon. If you think that the consortia would get behind this, that would be very helpful. I mean, it has to be a group effort that comes from the library community.
Indeed, thank you. One other question is, am I right? Is the CCS consortia also looking at this EBSCO deal?
I don't know. That's
okay.
and Layla, I mean, obviously Layla Heath knows a lot more about this than I do, but happy to talk to her and see what we can find out and send to you guys about that.
Okay, yeah, I'll follow with Layla on that question. I thought they might be, but I might be wrong. So sorry, everyone, if I'm getting any incorrect information out there. Ted, I'll turn to you. I don't know if there's any other announcements you've heard you'd like to make, or anyone else have questions.
I don't have any other now. Oh, go ahead.
Jennifer Cottrell. I think I can unmute you, Jennifer. You have your hand raised. Send unmute request. Jennifer,
yes,
you're unmuted.
I think I'm unmuted now. Yeah, I just wanted to, as a member of the SWAN board, respond to Laura's comment. I think it's a really important point to raise, and I'm really looking forward to discussing it with the SWAN board. One of the things when the group purchase decision was made that, that I evaluated as a small to medium library director myself is, we had purchased the smaller EBSCO package through Rails prior, and moving up to the larger package was something that I would not have made the cost decision to do except for the group purchase. But I thought in principle, the idea of group purchasing and experimenting with that on a large scale was really important. And so I kind of voted against my own interest to do it. But I think that that was in the spirit of experimentation. And when you're evaluating an experiment, you need to give it some time to work. But it's up for evaluation, and that's why I'm, as time goes on, interested in working with the board to look at the statistics for use of the various types of libraries. One thing that I remember hearing raised as a concern when the initial group purchase decision was made was the issue of marketing databases, that has always been a continual challenge for us, whether we purchase them in a consortium or as an individual library, is that getting your patrons to know those resources are out there and therefore use them has always been incredibly difficult. And asking for assistance with that from SWAN was one of the things that I mentioned when that decision was made. And I don't know about you, but I've been in triage mode as a library director and have not been pushing my staff to do the marketing work on the group package. Others may feel, there are things that are nice to do and things that are essential, and we're focusing on the essential right now. So just because those databases aren't necessarily getting the use in the first few months of the group purchase, it might improve. That's not to say it definitely will, but it's something that bears further investigation.
Thank you, Jennifer. Does anybody else have any other questions or announcements? Did Sam Johnson ever come back on the call? She never got a chance to introduce herself, and I'd really like for everyone to get a chance to say hello to her. She is our third SWAN 100 director. Sam, are you here? Can you unmute?
I'm unmute. Let's see.
I am here. Thanks, Ted.
There you go. Do you just want to say hello to everyone and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Sam Johnson, formerly Sam Millsap. So I've been over at Roselle since coming up on 5 years. So that's about 5 years I was out of SWAN, and I'm looking forward to coming back in.
Well, welcome back to SWAN, Sam. We're glad to have you, and we're glad to have your library with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, everyone.
Does anybody else have any other announcements that they would like to share with the group? You could send a chat or any other questions. Does not look like it. Okay, so upcoming, we have a SWAN board meeting on December 18th. You're all most welcome to join. And our next quarterly will be on March 4th, 2021. Let's hope that at least half of us are vaccinated by then. I think, unless there's anything else anyone would like to put before the board, I will adjourn this meeting at 11:28. Thanks, everybody.